What did you do with it?
Ah!
I don't know what you're talking about.
He was just a janitor, cleaning the billionaire's office like every night. But when he opened a forgotten box, his entire world stopped. What secret was powerful enough to freeze him in place forever? If this story resonated with you, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as beautiful as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The skyscraper always hummed at night, not with people, but with the echoes they left behind, half-drunk cups of coffee, glowing monitors left on, and the faint scent of expensive cologne that clung to the air. For most, the workday had ended hours ago, but for him, the night was only beginning. Elias, the janitor, pushed his cart down the glossy hallway of the top floor. The wheels squeaked a sound swallowed quickly by the cavernous silence of the billionaire's empire. He moved slowly, not out of laziness, but because his body carried the exhaustion of someone who had worked too hard, too long, for too little. His uniform hung loose on his thin frame, the faded fabric smelling faintly of bleach. Nobody noticed Elias during the day. Not the assistants rushing with lattes, not the executives barking into phones, not even the security guards. He was invisible until something broke, until a spill needed mopping. Then, briefly, he existed. Back home, Elias's world was smaller, warmer, but no less heavy. His daughter, Sophia, sat at the kitchen table every evening with her homework. She was bright, ambitious, dreaming of college, though their leaky apartment barely held together. Elias often returned home too tired to do more than kiss her forehead, eat reheated soup, and promise, "One day, Mija, things will be better." Promises were easy. Delivering them was harder. The rent was late again. Sophia needed new shoes, and though Elias rarely said it aloud, his wife's absence left a hollow ache that no amount of hard work could fill. Meanwhile, across the city, Adrian Cross, the billionaire whose name adorned the skyscraper, presided over a boardroom like a general over his troops. The man was all sharp, lines-tailored suits, steely eyes, and a voice that brokered no argument. His empire stretched across industries, tech, real estate, finance. Everything he touched turned to gold, but gold could be cold. Adrian's employees respected him, but few loved him. They feared his silence more than his words. He demanded perfection, and when it wasn't met, he dismissed people with a flick of his hand. Where Elias was overlooked, Adrian was overseen. Newspapers published his face, magazines quoted his ruthless genius, and the world marveled at his empire. Yet beneath the shine, Adrian carried his own secret, a wound he had hidden so deeply that not even his closest advisors dared ask about it. That secret was buried somewhere in his office. Forgotten, or perhaps deliberately left behind. The first time Elias stepped into Adrian's private suite, he felt out of place, like a man walking into a cathedral where he didn't belong. The office was vast floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, shelves of leather-bound books, abstract art on the walls. Even the silence seemed expensive. Elias adjusted his gloves, bent down, and began to wipe fingerprints from the glass desk. His reflection stared back at him, tired eyes, graying hair, a man who had aged faster than his years. He sighed, muttering under his breath, "Another night, another floor." He didn't know yet that this night would not be like the others. Behind him, the door clicked open. Elias stiffened, thinking he'd be scolded for lingering. But it wasn't the billionaire, it was Marcus, one of the younger managers, carrying himself with the smugness of someone who thought his suit made him untouchable. "You missed a spot," Marcus sneered, pointing at the already spotless glass table. He didn't wait for Elias to answer. He never did. To Marcus, the janitor was part of the furniture. Elias bit his tongue. He had learned long ago that silence was safer than defiance. Still, as Marcus's footsteps faded, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that the world saw him only as a shadow, a man who existed in the background of everyone else's story. And yet, fate was about to thrust him into the very center of one. When Elias turned back to the desk, his mop brushed against something unusual near the cabinet. A faint, scraping sound echoed. Curious, he crouched, pulling the cabinet slightly away from the wall. Dust puffed out in a grey cloud. Hidden behind it, almost swallowed by shadow, was a small, worn box. His heart stuttered. The cardboard was old, edges fraying, a thin layer of dust coating the lid. Didn't belong in this polished office. It looked forgotten. For a moment, Elias froze, staring. Then, almost against his better judgment, he reached out. Gloved hands trembled as they lifted the box. It was heavier than he expected. And in that instant, though he didn't yet know why, something deep in his chest whispered that this box would change everything. The box sat in Elias's hands like it didn't belong to this world. Every part of the billionaire's office was polished, calculated, worth a fortune, yet here was this thing. Cardboard, old and sagging, its corners chewed by time. Elias set it on the glass desk, the faint dust smudging across the pristine surface. He removed his gloves, slowly, almost reverently, as if peeling them off would make him less of a trespasser. For a long moment he just stared. Heart pounded. He shouldn't open it. He knew that. Nothing good ever came from touching what wasn't his. Still, there was something magnetic about the box, like it had been waiting years and years for someone to see it again. His fingers trembled as he lifted the lid. The first thing that hit him was the smell. Not dust, not mildew, but paper, old leather, and the faint trace of perfume. Something achingly human. Inside lay a jumble of objects, stack of letters bound with a faded ribbon, a photograph, the edges curled and worn, a small child's toy wooden, hand-carved, chipped at the edges from years of love. Elias's breath caught. His fingers hovered over the toy, then the photograph. He picked it up. The photo showed a young woman smiling, her hair caught mid-motion by the wind. In her arms, a child bright-eyed, grinning. Standing beside them, looking almost unrecognizable, was Adrian Cross. Younger, softer, his arm wrapped around them both. Elias's chest tightened. It wasn't just that the billionaire looked different, it was the expression. Gone was the cold detachment that employees whispered about. Here, he was simply a man, holding his family, with love written across his face. But what froze Elias was the child, because he knew that face. Not personally, not entirely, but something about it reached across the years and punched straight into his gut. It was a face that mirrored someone he had lost. His own little boy, Daniel, the boy who never got to grow up. Elias blinked hard, tears pricking his eyes. He pressed the photo to the desk, hands trembling. His mind spun. He wasn't imagining it, the same rounded cheeks, the same mischievous light in the eyes. "What is this?" he whispered, his voice cracking. He turned back to the letters, fumbling to untie the ribbon. The paper crinkled as he opened the first one. The handwriting was elegant, but shaky in parts, as if written with trembling hands. "Adrian, please, don't let business swallow you whole. Don't let him grow up not knowing who his father really is. You're not just a man of deals and numbers. You're his father. My love for you will never fade, but my patience will. Come home before it's too late." Elias's throat closed. He felt like an intruder, trespassing on a wound. But he couldn't stop. He read another, then another. Each letter poured out longing, regret, and unanswered pleas. And then he found the last one. It was shorter, angrier. "If you choose your empire over us, don't look for us again. Things money can't buy back. Doors close forever." The ribbon slipped from Elias's fingers. D. Letters scattered across the desk. He sat down heavily in the billionaire's chair, staring at the photo again. His mind reeled. Adrian Cross, the man the world feared and admired, had once had a familiar family he lost. And somehow, impossibly, it connected to Elias's own pain. Why did the child in the photo look so much like Daniel? Why did Elias feel as though fate had just dropped this box into his hands for a reason? The clock on the wall ticked. The city lights blinked below. Elias wiped his face with his sleeve, realizing tears had fallen without him noticing. He gathered the letters and the photo back into the box, his hands moving quickly, almost guiltily, as though Adrian himself would storm in any second. His breath came shallow and fast. He shouldn't have looked. He shouldn't have opened it. Yet he couldn't unsee what he had seen. A sound in the hallway made him jolt upright. Footsteps. Elias shoved the box back into the shadows behind the cabinet, sliding it into place just as the door opened. Adrian Cross entered. The billionaire's presence filled the room like a storm. He loosened his tie, muttering under his breath, his brow furrowed with the weight of boardroom battles. He barely glanced at Elias, who stood rigid beside his cart, trying not to shake. Adrian set his briefcase down, ran a hand through his hair, and poured himself a glass of whiskey from the bar. The ice clinked. He turned to Elias briefly. "You're still here?" Tone was flat, dismissive. "Yes, sir," Elias whispered, keeping his head low. Adrian waved him off. "Finish quickly. Lock the door when you leave." Elias nodded. His eyes flicked, just for a second, to the cabinet where the box was hidden. He swallowed hard. For the first time, he wasn't just looking at a billionaire. He was looking at a man with a past, a man who had once loved and lost, a man whose secret could shatter the image the world believed about him. And Elias alone knew it now. The night dragged on, but Elias couldn't shake the weight pressing down on his chest. Every sweep of his mop felt heavier, every sound of the office sharper. He kept replaying the photo in his mind. Adrian Cross, younger, human, smiling with a child who looked so achingly like his Daniel. By the time Elias clocked out and trudged home, the city was already stirring awake. The subway smelled of burnt coffee and metal, bodies pressed together in weary silence. Elias sat hunched in the corner, his hands gripping his lunch pail though it was empty. He kept his head down, as if afraid someone could read the secret now burning inside him. When he stepped into the apartment, Sophia was at the table, head bent over her homework. Her hair was pulled back, her pencil tapping rhythmically as she mouthed equations under her breath. "You're home late," she said without looking up. Elias forced a smile. "Big office tonight. Took longer." Sophia finally glanced up, narrowing her eyes. "Are you okay, Papa? You look different." Different. Elias wanted to laugh at that. If only she knew. But instead, he brushed her cheek gently. "Just tired, Miha." He turned away quickly, hiding the way his throat had tightened. He couldn't tell her. Not yet. How could he explain that he had found something that reopened wounds he had buried for years? That in a billionaire's office he had seen a reflection of the child he lost. He lay awake most of the day, the blinds shut against the sun. His mind wouldn't stop circling the questions. Who were the woman and child in the photo? Why had Adrian abandoned them? And why did the boy look so much like Daniel? Was it coincidence? Cruel trick of resemblance? Or something deeper? At work the following night, the weight of secrecy grew heavier. Elias moved through the skyscraper like a ghost, but inside, his thoughts were loud and restless. He caught himself pausing near the cabinet, staring at it too long, before shaking himself and moving on. That's when Marcus, the young manager, noticed. Marcus leaned against a desk, arms crossed, smirk plastered on his face. "What's wrong, old man? Lose something down there?" Elias startled, nearly dropping his mop. "No, sir, just cleaning." Marcus narrowed his eyes, as though smelling weakness. He had always enjoyed poking at Elias, but tonight he lingered longer. "Careful you don't mess with the boss's stuff. You wouldn't last a day if Cross thought you were snooping." Elias lowered his gaze, murmuring, "Yes, sir." Marcus chuckled and walked off, but not before shooting one last suspicious glance toward the cabinet. Elias's pulse hammered. He realized then how dangerous this secret could be. Later that night, Adrian himself appeared again, unexpected. Strode through the office with his usual command, his phone pressed at his ear. His voice was clipped, irritated. "I told you know. I don't care what the investors think. Handle it." He ended the call sharply, tossing the phone onto the desk. His eyes flicked to Elias, who was dusting shelves. For a moment, their gazes met, and Elias saw something there, not coldness, but exhaustion. A crack in the armor. But just as quickly, it vanished. Adrian poured another drink and turned his back. Elias wanted to speak, to say something, anything that would bridge the chasm between them, but his tongue felt heavy. He was just the janitor, invisible, and Adrian was untouchable. Dead, he finished his work in silence, each movement stiff with the effort of holding himself together. When he got home, Sophia was asleep on the couch, her textbook still open on her lap. Elias tucked a blanket around her and sat down, staring at her face. She looked so much like her mother at that moment that his chest ached. He whispered, almost to himself, "What would you have done, Daniel? If you saw that photo, if you read those letters, would you have stayed quiet, or would you have told the world?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. The following nights blurred together, a cycle of work and silence. But inside, Elias was unraveling. Every time he wheeled his cart into Adrian Cross's office, the cabinet seemed to glare at him, daring him to look again. He resisted. He had already seen too much. He mopped, dusted, polished all while avoiding the box's hiding place. But the more he tried to ignore it, the louder it was called. At home! Sophia noticed his distraction. "Papa," she said one morning over breakfast, "you haven't been yourself lately. Did something happen at work?" Elias stirred his coffee slowly, eyes fixed on the swirling liquid. "Just long nights, Mija. Nothing to worry about." But she frowned, unconvinced. "You always tell me not to keep secrets. Why are you keeping one from me?" The words hit him harder than she knew. He reached out and squeezed her hand. "Some things are too heavy for children to carry." "I'm not a child anymore," she whispered, pulling her hand back. Her disappointment lingered long after she left for school. At the skyscraper, Adrian's behavior shifted too. He prowled his office like a caged animal, restless, irritable. He snapped at assistants, demanded files at odd hours, and poured drink after drink late into the night. One evening, as Elias vacuumed quietly, Adrian's voice cut through the hum. "Do you ever wonder," Adrian said suddenly, not looking at him, "what people will remember about you when you're gone?" Elias froze. The question felt dangerous, like stepping onto thin ice. He cleared his throat. "I suppose that depends on what you leave behind." Adrian finally turned, his sharp gaze pinning Elias in place. "And what have you left behind?" Elias's grip tightened on the vacuum handle. Memories of Daniel flooded his mind, his laughter, his sudden illness, the hollow silence afterward. He swallowed hard. "Not enough," he admitted softly. Adrian studied him for a moment, expression unreadable, before dismissing him with a wave. "Clean the desk." The conversation ended there, but Elias's heart raced long after. Resistance took many forms. For Elias, it was silence, swallowing the truth for fear of losing his job or worse, stirring up something he couldn't control. For Adrian, it was deflection, drowning his ghosts in work, in whiskey, in anger. But secrets have a way of leaking through cracks, Marcus noticed first. He watched Elias too closely now, finding excuses to linger near the billionaire's suite. One night, he cornered Elias in the supply closet. "You've been acting strange," Marcus said, his tone dripping with mock concern. "Jumpier than usual, nervous. Did you find something you shouldn't have?" Elias stiffened. "I don't know what you mean," Marcus smoked, stepping closer. "Careful, old man. You think Cross cares about a janitor's life? If you're hiding something, it'll bury you." Elias forced himself to meet Marcus's eyes. "I do my job. Nothing more." Marcus studied him for a long moment, then shrugged. "We'll see." He walked away, but his smirk lingered in Elias's mind like a stain. That night, as Elias scrubbed the floor in Adrian's office, he caught sight of the reflection in the window, himself on his knees, cleaning up after men who didn't know his name. He hated what he saw, but he also hated the box for existing, for ripping open scars he had tried to close. He muttered to himself, voice thick with frustration, "Why me? Why now? He didn't notice Adrian watching from the doorway. You talk to yourself often, Adrian asked dryly. Elias jolted upright, heart hammering. Sorry, sir, long night. Adrian stepped inside, loosening his tie. His eyes, bloodshot from drink and exhaustion, swept the room. He poured another whiskey, the amber liquid catching the city lights. You're a quiet man, Adrian said. Most people chatter too much. You don't. Why is that? Elias hesitated, unsure if it was a trap. Because sometimes silence is safer. Adrian's jaw tightened. For a moment, he looked as though he might say more, but instead, he knocked back his drink and turned away. Elias exhaled slowly, relief flooding him yet. A nagging voice whispered that Adrian sensed something. When Elias returned home that morning, Sophia confronted him again. You're hiding something, she said firmly. And whatever it is, it's eating you alive. Please, Papa, tell me. He looked at her determined eyes. Her growing strength hand almost broke. Almost told her about the photo, the letters, the child who looked like her brother. But fear chained his tongue. Nothing, he whispered. Just work. Her disappointment cut deeper this time. She shook her head and walked away. Elias sat alone at the table, staring at the cracked wall. He had resisted temptation, resisted confession, and resisted confrontation. But the weight of resistance was crushing him, and he knew, deep down, that sooner or later something would break. Skyscraper was quieter than usual that night. Storm rolled over the city, rain pelting against the tall windows, thunder rumbling in the distance. Elias wheeled his cart into the top floor, humming softly under his breath to mask the unease that had become his constant companion. He had almost convinced himself he could settle back into routine. Just mop, dust, sweep. Don't think about the box. Don't think about the photo. Don't think about Daniel. But fate had other plans. The office door swung open, and Adrian Cross stepped in, not with his usual entourage, but alone. His suit jacket was drenched from the rain, his hair damp and slightly disheveled, as though he had walked through the storm without caring. Elias froze, mop in hand. Normally, Adrian arrived late and left into his work. But tonight, Adrian didn't retreat to the bar or his phone. He closed the door, tossed his wet jacket over a chair, and said simply, "Stay." The word hit like a command, but also a request. Elias hesitated, then nodded. "Of course, sir." Adrian poured himself a drink, then sat heavily in the chair opposite his desk. He didn't speak at first, just stared out the window as lightning flashed across the skyline. Elias resumed his cleaning in silence, hyper-aware of the billionaire's presence. Finally, Adrian broke it. Funny, isn't it? A man can own half the city and still feel like he has nothing. Elias's mop slowed. He kept his eyes on the floor, unsure how to respond. Adrian continued, almost to himself. People see the headlines, the wealth, the power. They think it means I sleep easy at night. They have no idea. Elias's throat tightened. For a flicker of a moment, Adrian sounded less like a titan of industry and more like a man confessing to a mirror. Before Elias could stop himself, he murmured, "Sometimes what we lose weighs heavier than what we gain." Adrian's head snapped toward him. "What did you say?" Elias froze, cursing himself. "Nothing, sir. Just words my father used to say." Adrian studied him with sharp eyes, suspicion flickering there. But then, surprisingly, he leaned back, swirling the drink in his hand. "Wise father." The silence stretched. Elias's heart pounded. Every second in that office felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. Then the door creaked open. Marcus stepped in, carrying a folder. His eyes flicked from Adrian to Elias, lingering too long on the janitor. "Apologies, sir. Didn't know you were occupied." Adrian waved him forward impatiently. "Leave it." Marcus set the folder down, but his smirk betrayed his thoughts. He enjoyed the sight of Elias in the same room as the billionaire, as if waiting for the janitor to slip up. On his way out, Marcus brushed past Elias and whispered, "Careful." Standing too close to the fire. Elias's face burned, but he said nothing. When the door shut, Adrian muttered, "That one talks too much." Elias risked a glance. Adrian's expression was unreadable, but his tone carried irritation. For once, Elias felt a flicker of shared ground. Both men, though worlds apart, quietly despised Marcus. Storm outside roared louder, lightning illuminating the room. Adrian rose and walked to the cabinet, the same one hiding the box. Elias's stomach dropped. Adrian rested his hand on the cabinet for a long moment. Elias's palms went sweaty, terrified the man would notice it had been moved. But then Adrian simply sighed, pulled out a bottle of water from the mini-fridge beside it, and closed it again. Elias exhaled silently, relief crashing through him. Adrian turned, his gaze heavy. "You've been working here for how long?" "Almost 15 years, sir. 15 years. Adrian gave a short, humorless laugh. "And yet, I've never noticed you until recently." Elias wasn't sure if it was an insult or an acknowledgement. "That's the nature of my work," he said quietly. Adrian studied him a moment longer. "Perhaps I should start paying more attention." Elias's chest tightened. The words should have sounded like praise, but they felt like a spotlight, and he wanted nothing more than to disappear back into the shadows. Storm raged on, trapping them together longer than either expected. And as the night stretched, it became clear Elias could no longer remain invisible, and Adrian could no longer ignore the man quietly sweeping the corners of his empire. For better or worse, their worlds were colliding. Storm had passed, but the tension remained. Over the next week, Adrian appeared in his office more often and always at the same hours Elias worked. At first, Elias thought it was a coincidence, but then Adrian began asking questions, small ones, harmless on the surface. "How many children do you have? Do you believe in second chances? Do you think people can change?" Each question struck Elias like a hammer, but he answered carefully, cautiously. He couldn't afford to reveal what weighed on him, not when the billionaire's gaze cut like glass. But the proximity was wearing him down. Cleaning in silence while Adrian brooded nearby became unbearable. Every glass Elias polished, every surface he wiped, he felt the unspoken weight pressing between them, the secrets neither dared name. Marcus noticed. Marcus always noticed. He began lurking more, inventing excuses to check on the office during Elias's shift. He would bring files at odd hours, peek at Elias with sly curiosity, and linger too long. One evening, after Adrian had stormed out for a late-night meeting, Marcus cornered Elias near the elevators. "You've gotten close to him, haven't you?" Marcus said, leaning against the wall with that smug grin. Elias shook his head. "I just clean." Marcus chuckled. "Don't play dumb with me. I see it, the way he talks to you, like you're important." Elias stiffened. "I'm not." Marcus's smile widened. "Maybe not, but if you know something worth money, maybe you and I could come to an arrangement." Elias's heart raced. Marcus didn't know about the books. He couldn't. But his probing made Elias feel cornered, like prey being circled by a wolf. "I have nothing to give you," Elias said firmly, stepping into the elevator. "And even if I did, I wouldn't." Marcus's grin faltered for a split second, replaced by a glint of irritation. As the doors closed, he hissed, "Careful, old man. People who keep secrets don't last long in this building." The following night, Adrian was already in the office when Elias arrived. Papers were scattered across the desk, a glass of whiskey half empty, his tie loosened. "You're late," Adrian said without looking up. Elias checked his watch. He wasn't late, not by a second. "But," he swanned the protest. "Traffic, sir." Adrian leaned back, eyeing him. "Do you always lie so easily?" The accusation stung. Elias gripped the handle of his cart. "I don't lie." Adrian's lip curled, but instead of pressing, he waved at the mess of papers. "Clean it." Elias obeyed, stacking the files, wiping rings of condensation from the wood. He could feel Adrian's eyes burning into him, measuring, dissecting. "Finally," Adrian spoke, his voice low. "Do you know why I built this company, Elias?" Elias froze. The use of his name was startling. "Rare." I built it, Adrian continued, so no one could ever take anything from me again. Not money, not respect, not a... He cut himself off, draining the rest of his whiskey. Ilias's hands trembled as he wiped the desk. He wanted to ask what had been taken, but fear clamped his mouth shut. Adrian slammed the empty glass down. But it doesn't matter, does it? People will always find a way to betray you. The words hit Elias too close to home. He set the cloth down and met Adrian's gaze. Not everyone betrays, sir. Some of us just survive. The room went still. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating Adrian's face, haunted, tired, furious. For a heartbeat, Elias thought he had said too much. But then Adrian looked away, muttering, "Survival is a poor substitute for living." Later that night, Elias found Sophia waiting up for him, her arms crossed. "Papa, enough. You're not telling me what's going on. I know something happened." Elias rubbed his eyes. He was exhausted, body and soul, complicated. "I can handle complicated," Sophia said firmly. "What I can't handle is watching you fall apart in silence." Her words pierced him, but again he resisted. "Soon, Mija. I'll tell you soon." Sophia turned away, hurt in her eyes. "That's what you always say." Meanwhile, Marcus was setting his own plans in motion. In the break room, Elias overheard him whispering to another manager. "Cross is hiding something. I can feel it. And the janitor, he knows more than he lets on. Keep an eye on them both. If there's a secret, I'll find it." Elias retreated before they saw him, his chest pounding. Marcus was circling closer. Boxed the photo, the letters. If Marcus discovered them first, the damage would be irreversible. But confessing to Adrian carried its own dangers. Elias felt trapped between silence and exposure, both equally deadly. That night, as he polished the last of the glass walls, Adrian stood near the window, silhouetted against the glittering city. His voice was quiet, almost fragile. "Tell me, Elias, if you had the chance to change the past, would you take it?" Elias's hand stilled on the cloth. Chest ached. He thought of Daniel, of Sophia, of the box that haunted him. "Yes," he whispered. "I would." Adrian turned slowly, his eyes sharp, searching. For a moment, it felt like Adrian knew. And Elias realized the walls between them were thinning. Secrets could not stay buried forever. Elias stood at the sink that morning, scrubbing his hands even though they were already clean. Skin around his knuckles was raw, but he couldn't stop. He needed to wash away the weight he carried, though he knew soap could never touch it. Behind him, Sophia stirred awake on the couch, her textbooks spilling onto the floor. She rubbed her eyes and frowned at the sight of him. "Papa," she said softly, "you're not okay. Please, talk to me." Elias gripped the edge of the sink, his back rigid. For days he had resisted. But seeing her there, so much like her mother, so much like the son he had lost, his strength crumbled. He turned, his face etched with exhaustion. "You were too young to remember him." "Daniel," Sophia blinked. "Daniel?" "Your brother." The word caught in his throat, heavy with years of silence. She froze. "I had a brother?" Elias nodded slowly, lowering himself into the chair. He gestured for her to sit, his hands trembling. "He was older than you, just a boy, full of light. He used to sing nonsense songs in the kitchen, drive your mother crazy with his little paper airplanes." Elias's voice softened, drifting into memory. "But then he got sick. We thought it was a cold at first, just a cough, a fever. The doctors said it was something more, something rare, something we couldn't fight." Sophia's eyes widened. "And he?" Elias's throat closed. He nodded. Silence filled the room, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. "I tried to be strong for your mother, for you," Elias continued, tears brimming in his eyes. "But inside, I broke. When Daniel died, a part of me died too. I buried it deep because I thought if I stayed busy, if I kept cleaning and working, maybe the grief would stay buried with it." Sophia reached across the table, gripping his hand. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because I wanted to protect you," Elias whispered. and because saying his name felt like ripping open a wound that never healed. He looked into her eyes, desperate for her to understand, but then I saw something at work, something I shouldn't have seen. A photograph, a child who looked just like Daniel. It was like seeing him alive again. My heart stopped. Sophia gasped, her fingers tightening around his. In Mr. Cross's office. Elias nodded, the secret finally spilling free. Yes, a box of letters, too. I don't know the whole truth, but I know that man is hiding something, and I can't escape the feeling that it's connected to our Daniel, to us, to everything. That night at work, Elias moved through the office with fresh heaviness. Confessing to Sophia had brought relief, but also sharpened the danger. Now, she carried part of the burden, and he hated himself for it. As he dusted Adrian's bookshelves, his mind drifted back to the hospital room, to beeping monitors, sterile smell of bleach, and fear. Daniel's small hand gripped him until it loosened forever. He had told himself for years that grief was private, a cross no one else needed to bear. But grief had a way of leaking into every silence, every empty chair, every sleepless night. And now, with the box, it felt like Daniel had reached back into his life, demanding to be remembered. Adrian noticed Elias's distraction. "You're quieter than usual," Adrian said one evening, sipping his whiskey. Elias gave a bitter smile. "I didn't think that was possible." Adrian's lips curved faintly, but then his gaze sharpened. "You've lost someone." Elias froze, pulse pounded. "What makes you say that?" "Because only those who've lost move the way you do." Adrian leaned forward, his voice low, haunted, careful, as if every step might shatter something fragile. Elias's breath caught. For a terrifying moment, he thought Adrian could see straight through him to Danielle, to the box, to everything. But Adrian leaned back, closing the distance again with another drink. Elias turned away quickly, hiding the tears that had welled in his eyes. Later, in the supply closet, Marcus cornered him again. "You've been carrying something," Marcus whispered, his eyes gleaming. "I can smell it. You think Cross doesn't see it too? One wrong move, old man, and he'll tear you apart." Elias shoved past him, muttering, "Leave me alone." But Marcus's laugh followed him down the hall. "Secrets don't stay buried. Not in this building." That morning, back home, Sophia was waiting. She looked at him with a fierce determination far beyond her years. "We can't keep this to ourselves, Papa," she said. "If that photo means something, if Mr. Cross is hiding a family, or worse, we need to know. Daniel deserves the truth." Elias's heart twisted. "And if the truth destroys us?" Sophia held his gaze. "Then at least we won't be living in lies." Her words left him shaken. For years, he had resisted speaking Daniel's name. Now his daughter was urging him to drag the truth into the light, and Elias knew the time for silence was ending. Skyscraper's top floor was unusually quiet. No phone calls, no assistants darting in and out. Just the hum of the city beyond the glass and the soft shuffle of Elias's mop across the polished floor. Adrian sat at his desk, jacket draped over the chair, tie loosened, staring at a document without reading it. Glass of whiskey sat untouched, a rarity Elias couldn't help but notice. The silence stretched until Adrian spoke. "Do you believe in ghosts, Elias?" Elias paused mid-swipe, brow furrowing. "Ghosts, sir?" Adrian's gaze stayed fixed on the window. "Not the kind that rattle chains, the kind that follow you everywhere. Memories, regrets, faces you can't forget, no matter how much you drink or how high you build your walls." Elias's chest tightened. His first instinct was to stay silent, but then, softly, he said, "Yes, I believe in those." Adrian turned his head, eyes narrowing slightly as if studying him. "You've lost someone." Elias gripped the mop handle tighter. He thought of Daniel's smile, the way his laughter had filled their apartment. "Yes." For once, Adrian didn't press. He simply nodded, as though Elias's single word told him everything he needed to know. Later, as Elias dusted the shelves, Adrian suddenly rose and crossed to the record player in the corner of the room. Elias hadn't even realized it worked. He had only ever cleaned it. Adrian pulled out a vinyl, placed it gently, and let the crackling notes of a piano fill the air. Elias froze. It was a song he hadn't heard in years. A soft, aching melody his wife used to hum in the kitchen while Daniel played on the floor. He turned, startled. "This Sonda." Adrian glanced over. "Debussy. Clair de Lune. My mother used to play it when I was a boy." Elias's throat tightened. "My wife loved it. She said it sounded like the sky dreaming." The two men stood in silence as the music washed over them, two lives, worlds apart, bound for a moment by the same fragile notes. When the piece ended, Adrian poured water into a glass and, without looking, slid it across the desk toward Elias. "It." Elias hesitated. Janitors didn't sit in billionaires' chairs, but something in Adrian's voice wasn't a command, it was an invitation. Slowly he sat. For a long while, they said nothing. Two men listening to the city hum beyond the glass. Adrian finally spoke. "Do you ever wonder what your life might have been if things had gone differently?" Elias stared at his calloused hands. "Every day." Adrian's jaw flexed. He swirled his glass slowly, his voice low. "I built everything you see here to prove I could outrun mine. But the higher I climb, the more I realize the ghosts climb with me." Elias looked at him, surprised by the honesty cutting through Adrian's usual coldness. "Maybe we're not meant to outrun them. Maybe we're meant to carry them, so they don't disappear." Adrian studied him for a long moment, eyes sharp but softened by something unspoken. Then he gave the faintest nod, as though conceding the point. When Elias left the office that night, he felt a strange weight lifted. Not gone, but shifted. For the first time in years, he had spoken about loss without being dismissed or pitied. At home, Sophia noticed the difference immediately. "You're smiling," she said as he walked in. "Am I?" Elias chuckled softly, surprised at himself. Sophia tilted her head. Something happened. Elias hesitated, then nodded. "Not something. Someone. Mr. Cross, he showed me a side I didn't think he had." Her brows furrowed. "You're bonding with him." Elias sighed. "Maybe. Maybe we're just two broken men circling the same wound." Sophia reached across the table, her voice quiet but firm. "Just don't forget, Papa broken men can still hurt others." Her warning lingered long after she went to bed. The next night, Elias returned to find Adrian already there again, staring out the window with the same tired eyes. Without speaking, Adrian gestured to the record player. Elias crossed the room, placed the needle, and let the same soft melody drift into the air. For the first time, Adrian smiled, not the sharp, practiced smile he wore for the press, but something small, almost human. And Elias felt the strangest thing stir in his chest. Not trust, not yet, but the first fragile thread of understanding. The bond, as fragile as glass, was tested almost immediately. Adrian had begun lingering in the office more often, and with each night, Elias felt the silence between them softening. Spoke little, but when they did, the words carried weight, a shared acknowledgement of ghosts. But ghosts don't remain still. They are complicated. One evening, Elias arrived to find Marcus already inside the office, whispering with Adrian. Their voices cut off the moment Elias stepped in. Adrian's gaze hardened. "You're early." Elias bowed his head. "I can wait in the hall, sir." But Marcus smirked. "No need. He should hear this. After all, even janitors can be useful in their own way." Adrian's glare shut Marcus up, but not before suspicion had been planted. Elias felt it digging into him like a thorn. When Marcus left, Elias caught the faintest whisper as he passed. "Secrets always come out." Elias's blood ran cold. At home, Sophia grew restless. She had started searching online, digging into Adrian Cross's past. She showed Elias articles, tabloids speculating about mistresses, rumors of estranged family members, whispers of scandals that never fully broke the surface. "Papa, don't you see?" Ophir pressed. The photo, Césaire part of this. What if he abandoned a family? What if he's hiding children? People deserve to know. Elias shook his head firmly. Careful, Miha. Rumors destroy lives, guilty or not. We don't know the truth yet. But we could know, Sophia insisted. You work there. You're closer than anyone. Her words stabbed him. She didn't understand the risk. If Adrian discovered he had snooped, Elias would lose his job or worse. Still, her determination mirrored his own guilt. The box had woken questions he was too afraid to answer. Meanwhile, Adrian's world was fracturing in ways Elias could see but not yet understand. Phone calls grew sharper. Adrian's voice, usually precise, carried frustration. The board won't wait forever. Seal the deal. No excuses. One night, Elias found him pacing the office, tie discarded, hair disheveled. His phone buzzed with messages Adrian ignored. Trouble? Elias asked quietly before he could stop himself. Adrian gave a bitter laugh. Trouble is the only constant in this business. He sank into his chair, rubbing his temples. It's not the numbers, it's the people. Betrayal wears expensive suits. Elias thought of Marcus. He thought of the smirk, the whispered threats. Gut twisted. Sometimes betrayal comes from where you least expect. Elias murmured. Adrian lifted his head, studying him. For a moment, Elias thought he'd pressed too far. But then Adrian nodded slowly. True. The complications didn't end there. One rainy night, Elias discovered Marcus rifling through the supply closet, pretending to search for inventory. What are you doing? Elias demanded. Marcus straightened, smirk intact. Funny thing, old man. I've been thinking, what if there's something in this building, something hidden that could change everything for Cross? Wouldn't you want to know what it is? Elias's heart pounded. He forced his voice steady. I clean floors, Marcus. That's all. Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice. You may fool him. You don't fool me. I'll find out what you're hiding. And when I do, he tapped his pocket, as if a recorder rested inside. We'll see who walks away richer. Elias left quickly, fear gnawing at him. Marcus was circling dangerously close to the cabinet. Back home! Sophia confronted him again. Papa, you're scared, she said. I see it in your eyes. Is Marcus the problem? Elias hesitated, then nodded. He suspects something. He won't stop digging. Ophia's jaw tightened. Then we need to get to the truth first before he does. Elias shook his head. Not that simple. The truth, it could break everything. Ophia reached for his hand. Or it could heal, Papa. Didn't you tell me ghosts follow us until we face them? Her words echoed Adrian's earlier confession. Ghosts, regrets, faces you can't outrun. And Elias realized the complications were no longer external. They were inside him. His silence clashed with his daughter's determination, his guilt with his need to survive, his fragile bond with Adrian against the storm Marcus was brewing. That night, as he returned to the skyscraper, the city lights reflected in the rain-soaked streets. Elias entered the top floor with dread twisting in his stomach. Adrian was waiting, arms crossed, eyes sharp. You've been distracted, he said flatly. Elias stiffened. I've done my work, sir. That's not what I mean. Adrian stepped closer, lowering his voice. I can sense when someone carries secrets. Don't forget I built an empire on sniffing out lies. Elias's chest tightened. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Adrian studied him for a long moment, then turned away. Be careful, Elias. Some truths can't be hidden forever. The words cut deep. Because they weren't a threat, they were a reflection. The office was dim that night, lit only by the skyline's glow. Adrian sat slouched behind his desk, a half-empty bottle beside him. Elias hesitated at the doorway, debating whether to slip in quietly or retreat. Come in, Adrian said without looking up. His voice was heavy, almost human. Elias wheeled his cart inside, setting down his mop. The silence felt thicker than usual, filled with something unsaid. Adrian finally lifted his gaze, eyes rimmed red. "Tell me, Elias, have you ever loved someone so much it terrified you?" Elias's throat tightened. He thought of Daniel, of Sophia, of the photo in the box. "Yes," he whispered. Adrian gave a bitter smile. "Then you know what it's like to lose them." Elias froze. He hadn't expected Adrian to say it aloud. Adrian rose, pacing to the window. The city stretched beneath him, vast and indifferent. "I wasn't always this man, you know. The world thinks I was born cold, ruthless. Maybe I am now. But once—" He trailed off, his reflection in the glass looking younger, softer. "Once I loved, and it ruined me." Elias's hands clenched. "What happened?" Adrian laughed without humor. "What always happens. Promises, lies, choices you can't undo. I met her when I had nothing. She believed in me when no one else did. For a while. That was enough. Then the company grew. I grew. But she wanted something I couldn't give time. A family. I told myself I'd give it later, once I had built something worthy. Later never came." His voice cracked on the last word. Elias's chest baked. He could almost hear Sophia's warnings echoing in his head. Broken men can still hurt others. Adrian turned, eyes blazing with a mix of rage and sorrow. "She left. Took our son with her." The air punched out of Elias's lungs. His mop slipped, clattering against the floor. Adrian didn't notice. He was lost in memory. "For years I told myself they didn't matter, that I could replace love with power. But the truth—" His voice dropped, raw. "The truth is, every deal I've made, every empire I've built, was just me trying to fill the hole they left behind." Elias swallowed hard, forcing his voice steady. "And now?" Adrian sank back into his chair, looking suddenly older. "Now I have nothing but ghosts. A son I don't know, a woman I drove away, and a company that devours me whole." The confession hung heavy in the air. Elias's mind spun. The photo. The child. The resemblance to Daniel. Twould it be? Was Adrian's son the boy in the picture, the one Elias had mistaken for his own lost child? The implications churned like a storm inside him. Later that night, after Adrian left, Elias lingered in the office, staring at the cabinet. He could almost feel the weight of the box inside, humming with secrets. Adrian's words echoed. "She left, took our son with her." He thought of Sophia at home, demanding the truth. He thought of Daniel, gone too soon. And, for the first time, he realized Adrian's ghosts were not just mirrors of his Oenthe, were keys to the mystery that had been haunting him since the night he opened the box. At home. Elias sat across from Sophia, his face pale. "What is it, Papa?" she asked, alarmed. Elias struggled to find words. "Adrian, he told me something tonight. About a woman, a son." Sophia leaned forward. "Oh, it's true. He's hiding a family." "Not hiding," Elias whispered. "Losing. He lost them, Sophia, just like we lost Daniel." Her eyes softened for a moment, but determination quickly returned. "Then we have to know who that boy is. If he's alive, if he's Adrian's, then everything makes sense. That's why he hides it." Elias shook his head, torn. "If we expose this, it could destroy him." Sophia's voice sharpened. "Oh, it could save him." The question burned between them. Was Adrian a cruel man burying shame, or a broken father drowning in regret? Meanwhile, Marcus wasn't idle. Spotted Adrian leaving late one night, eyes glassy from drink, and lingered behind. Once the office emptied, Marcus slipped inside. He moved quickly, rifling through drawers, pulling at cabinet handles. When his hand landed on the locked drawer containing the box, his smirk widened. "Found you," he whispered. Stage was set. Adrian's ghosts were loose. Elias's secrets threatened to collide with them. And Marcus, circling like a vulture, was closer than ever to tearing everything into the open. The morning after Adrian's confession, the skyscraper buzzed with tension. Rumors of board disputes, whispers of collapsing deals, and Marcus's smug presence filled the air. Yet, inside Adrian's office, a strange calm lingered. Elias entered quietly, mop in hand, expecting Adrian to be buried in paperwork. Instead, he found him standing awkwardly near the record player, fumbling with a vinyl. "Have you ever noticed," Adrian muttered, "how these things never cooperate when you need them to?" He cursed under his breath as the needle screeched. Elias chuckled softly. "You're treating it like a hostile takeover. Be gentle, it's music, not business." Adrian shot him a look, but the corner of his mouth twitched. "Do you think you can do better?" Elias set his mop aside and approached. With careful fingers, he adjusted the needle, coaxing the record into a smooth, lilting tune. The piano filled the air, soothing the tension. Adrian exhaled. "Joe off." Elias smiled faint. "My wife loved music. She said patience is what makes it beautiful." Adrian was silent for a long moment, then gave a low laugh. "Patience? That explains why I've never been good at it." The laugh surprised Elias. It wasn't cruel or sharp, just weary. Humans! And, for the first time, Elias realized how rare it was to hear Adrian sound like that. Later that evening, the two sat in unusual companionship. Adrian poured himself a drink, then hesitated before sliding a glass of water across the desk toward Elias. "Thought you might be tired," Adrian said. Elias blinked. "You're offering me water now." "Don't make it weird," Adrian muttered. Elias laughed, a real, warm laugh that filled the room in a way silence never had. Adrian stared at him, then shook his head. "You know, you're probably the only person who's ever laughed in my office and lived to tell the tale." "Then I'll consider myself blessed," Elias replied with a grin. For a moment, Billionaire and Janitor weren't titles. They were just two men sharing the rare luxury of lightness. But humor wasn't the only bond forming. Smooth gestures began to surface. One night, Elias noticed Adrian struggling with cufflinks, his hands trembling from exhaustion. Without asking, Elias stepped forward and fastened them for him, the way he used to for Daniel before school dances. Adrian stiffened, unaccustomed to help, but then gave a quiet, almost grateful nod. Another time, when Elias hummed absent-mindedly while polishing the desk, Adrian recognized the melody. "That's Chopin," he said. Elias smirked. "And here I thought you only knew numbers." Adrian arched his brow. "Careful. I could have you fired for that." But his eyes betrayed amusement. "At home!" Sophia noticed the shift. "You're different, Papa," she said one evening as they ate. "Lighter, happier." Elias hesitated. "Maybe I'm remembering that even the coldest men still have hearts." Sophia frowned. "Don't let his heart blind you. He's still Adrian Cross." Her words echoed his own caution, yet Elias couldn't ignore the truth. Adrian was no longer just a ruthless billionaire in his eyes. He was a father who had lost, a man who carried regret like Elias carried grief, and that bond, fragile as it was, grew stronger with every shared laugh, every unspoken understanding. But not everyone welcomed it. Marcus noticed Elias's growing presence around Adrian. He sneered when Elias entered the office. "Funny, isn't it? The janitor spends more time here than some of us on the payroll." Adrian's sharp tone cut through. "He's earned it." Elias's head snapped up, startled. Adrian rarely defended anyone. Marcus's smirk faltered, replaced by something darker. That defense, however small, sealed something unspoken between Adrian and Elias. They weren't equals, but they were no longer strangers. One late night, after the office had emptied and the city lights glimmered below, Adrian leaned back in his chair. "You know what I envy about you, Elias." Elias looked up from his cart. "Can't imagine there's much." Adrian's eyes softened. "Still laugh, even after everything." "Me? I forgot how." Elias met his gaze, steady. "Then maybe you should start practicing again." Adrian smiled faintly, almost shyly. "Maybe I will." And for the first time since stepping foot in that towering office weeks ago, Elias didn't feel like a janitor cleaning someone else's world. He felt like a man holding a thread that could tether another broken soul back to life. It began with whispers. By the time Elias arrived that evening, the skyscraper was alive with tension. Assistants scurried through the halls, phones glued to their ears. Security guards stood tighter at their posts. Something had happened. When Elias reached the top floor, Adrian was already there, pale, furious, pacing like a caged animal. Marcus lingered in the corner, smirk sharp enough to cut glass. Adrian's voice snapped through the room. Someone leaked it. Elias froze. Leaked what? Adrian slammed a newspaper onto the desk. The headline screamed, "Billionaire's secret son. Cross-empire shaken by hidden family allegations." Elias's heart plummeted. The article contained everything: the photo, hints of the letters, whispers of abandonment. It painted Adrian as a cold, careless father who had buried his past beneath money. Adrian's glare cut across the room, landing on Elias. "This was in my office, in a locked cabinet. Tell me, Elias, who else had access?" Elias's throat went dry. "EA never." Marcus stepped forward smoothly. "I told you, Adrian. I warned you. He's been snooping. A janitor of all people stumbling upon secrets worth millions. You trusted him." "No," Elias whispered, shaking his head. "That's not true. I never said a word." Adrian's face was carved from stone. "Then explain how the world knows." The silence was suffocating. Elias's chest burned with 1,000 words he couldn't say. About Marcus in the supply closet. About Sophia pushing him to search for answers. About his own weakness. His own guilt. Dead. All he managed was, "I tried to protect it." Adrian's eyes narrowed. Protect it? Or exploit it? The accusation sliced deeper than Elias expected. His knees felt weak. "I lost a son, Adrian. I would never. Don't you dare use him as your excuse." Adrian roared, slamming a fist onto the desk. The sound echoed like thunder. Elias flinched. Adrian's rage wasn't just about betrayal, it was about the wound ripped wide open. A past he had hidden, now displayed for the world to devour. Marcus watched with quiet satisfaction, the vulture circling. At home, the storm only worsened. Sophia sat at the kitchen table, newspaper spread before her. Her face was pale, guilt etched into her features. "Kappa," she whispered. "I didn't think. I just wanted answers." Elias's chest constricted. "You gave someone this?" "I posted questions online, just small things, threads on forums people noticed. Journalists reached out. I didn't mean for it to explode." Tears welled in her eyes. "I thought maybe the truth would heal him." Elias turned away, his body trembling. His daughter, his only surviving child, had been the spark, and Adrian would never believe him innocent. No. The fallout was merciless. Board members demanded explanations. Stock prices wavered. Reporters crowded the building, shouting questions about Adrian's secret son. And Adrian, he withdrew. The office that had once begun to feel almost human grew cold again. The record player gathered dust. The glass of water was no longer offered. When Elias entered one night, Adrian didn't look up. "Finish your work and leave." "Adrian, please," Elias whispered. Adrian's voice was flat, final. "You were the one person I let close, and look what it cost me." The words shattered something inside Elias. Cleaned in silence that night, every stroke of the mop heavier than the last. But the cruelest blow came days later. Elias arrived to find the cabinet empty. D boxed the photo. The letters was gone. Adrian's voice cut through the silence. "Did you think I'd leave it lying around again? I've moved it somewhere safe. Somewhere you'll never find." Elias's chest tightened. "Adrian, you have to know I didn't do this." Adrian's eyes, once softened by shared ghosts and laughter, were ice again. "I don't have to know anything, except that I was a fool to believe a janitor could understand my world." The dismissal was worse than anger. It was a rejection. That night, Elias sat in his small kitchen, head in his hands. Sophia hovered nearby, guilt in every glance. "Papa," she whispered, "I'm sorry. I thought the truth could set him free." Elias shook his head slowly. Truth without trust is just another weapon. His heart ached, not only for the bond broken, but for Adrian, the man who had finally smiled, finally laughed, only to retreat deeper into his ghosts. And for himself for daring to believe that a janitor and a billionaire could share something real. Skyscraper that once pulsed with power now felt like a battlefield after war. The news cycle had chewed Adrian alive and spat him out. Every headline screamed scandal, every photo captured his clenched jaw, his hollow eyes. And through it all, Elias moved like a shadow, cleaning floors no one noticed, carrying guilt that wasn't entirely his, yet weighed heavier than any mop bucket. One evening, when he entered the top floor, Adrian wasn't at his desk. The office, usually spotless, was chaotic, papers scattered, glasses left half empty, curtains drawn tight. A fortress turned into a prison. Adrian emerged from the balcony, tie loose, hair unkempt. He looked at Elias, eyes bloodshot. "Why are you still here?" Adrian's voice was hoarse. Elias gripped his mop. "Because someone has to be." Adrian laughed bitterly. "You sound like her. She used to say the same thing when everything fell apart. She stayed, until she didn't." Elias wanted to speak, to remind him of the nights they'd shared music, of the laughter they'd almost remembered. But Adrian's walls were iron again. Nothing Elias said could reach through. At home, the fallout burned deeper. Sophia avoided her father's eyes, spent hours on her laptop, reading comment sections, watching interviews. "They're calling him a monster," she whispered one night. "A father who abandoned his son." Elias sank into his chair, exhausted. "Do you see what happens when secrets get forced into the light? They get twisted until no one remembers the truth." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes. "I just wanted to help him. You wanted to play hero." Elias snapped before he could stop himself. The hurt on her face sliced him in two. She fled to her room, and Elias sat in the quiet, shame burning his chest. He had lost Daniel once. Now, he feared he was losing Sophia too. Marcus thrived in the chaos, trotted through the halls with an air of victory. Colleagues whispered about how he was poised to rise if Adrian fell. In quiet corners, he fed reporters crumbs, shaping the narrative to his advantage. But Marcus wasn't satisfied with Adrian's downfall. He wanted Elias destroyed as well. One night, he cornered him in the lobby. "You should have stayed in your lane, old man," Marcus sneered. "Now look at you, just another broken piece of collateral." Elias clenched his fists but said nothing. Silence was the only weapon he had left. Marcus leaned closer, his voice a hiss. "And the best part, Adrian thinks you did it. That guilt will eat you alive faster than I ever could." Then he walked away, leaving Elias with the words gnawing at him. Days blurred together. Adrian stopped attending board meetings, leaving his lieutenants scrambling. Rumors spread that the empire was cracking. His office lights still burned late into the night, but Elias rarely saw him. When he did, Adrian's face was a mask of stone, his voice clipped, almost cruel. For Elias, every visit to that office felt like penance. Scrubbed floors already clean, polished glass already shining, as if by erasing dust he could erase the distance between them. But no mop could wipe away betrayal. At home, Sophia's silence was louder than words. She avoided dinners, her plate untouched. When Elias tried to reach her, she whispered, "You don't understand, Papa. You saw him as broken, but I saw him as someone who needed saving, and I ruined it." Elias reached across the table, his hand trembling. "No, me. You only made the mistake we all make. You thought truth alone could heal, but truth without trust only destroys." Her eyes shimmered. "Then how do we fix it?" Elias had no answer. One night, unable to bear the silence, Elias returned to the skyscraper earlier than usual. He found Adrian sitting in the dark, staring at the city below. A half-empty glass rested in his hand. Adrian didn't look up. "Do you know what it's like to be hated by people who don't even know you?" Elias stepped closer. "Yes." Adrian's head turned, surprise flickering in his eyes. Elias swallowed hard. "When my boy died," neighbors whispered, "they said I should have done more, been a better father, saved him somehow. They didn't know, but they hated me anyway." For a moment, silence reigned. Then Adrian looked away, his voice barely a whisper. "Maybe we deserve it." Elias's chest ached. He wanted to say no, that pain didn't always mean guilt, but Adrian's face told him he wasn't ready to hear it. And so, the fallout settled like dust after an explosion. Adrian buried himself deeper in ghosts. Ophia carried guilt that hardened her into silence. Marcus sharpened his knives, and Elias, caught between all three, wondered if the fragile bond he had once glimpsed was already gone forever. Dawn lingered. Days bled into nights, each one heavier than the last. Adrian avoided the board, avoided the press, and, most of all, avoided Elias. Ophia still moved like a ghost through their apartment. Elias carried the weight of two broken souls Adrian and his daughter yet could not fix either, until the helping hand arrived in the most unexpected way. It was Mrs. Ramirez. She was the building's oldest tenant, a retired seamstress who lived down the hall from Elias. Her hands shook with age, but her eyes missed nothing. She had known Elias since before Sophia was born, back when Daniel was still alive. One evening, she knocked on Elias's door, holding a pot of caldo. "You look thinner," she said, pushing past him into the kitchen. "And your girl, she doesn't smile anymore. Sit." Elias obeyed, too tired to protest. Mrs. Ramirez ladled soup into bowls, her voice brisk but kind. "You've been carrying ghosts again. I can see it in your shoulders." Elias tried to smile. "Maybe I just need a new mop." She gave him a sharp look. "Don't joke with me, Elias. I've seen men drown while pretending they're fine. You think because you're old you can't start over? You think because you lost one child you can't fight for the one still breathing?" Her words struck hard. He glanced toward Sophia's closed door, guilt gnawing at him. Mrs. Ramirez softened. "Talk to her. And talk to him, the man in that office. Ghosts don't leave on their own. You have to face them." Elias's throat tightened. What if facing them only makes it worse? "Then at least you won't die with words unsaid," she said firmly. For the first time in weeks, Elias felt a spark stir inside him. The very next evening, Elias returned to the skyscraper with renewed resolve. Adrian was there, hunched at his desk, papers spread before him like the ruins of an empire. He barely acknowledged Elias's presence. Elias set his mop aside. "I spoke to someone today. She told me ghosts don't leave unless we face them." Adrian's head lifted slightly, eyes narrowing. "And what does some neighbor of yours know about ghosts?" "She knows about loss," Elias replied quietly. "She's buried 2 sons. She says silence only makes the dead heavier." For a long moment, Adrian said nothing. Then, to Elias's shock, he leaned back and let out a low laugh, bitter but genuine. "Your life is full of philosophers, Elias. First your wife, now your neighbor." Elias smiled faintly. "Maybe the world is trying to tell us something." Adrian studied him. "And what do you think it's saying? That we can't keep hiding from the people we've lost, or from the people still here?" Elias's gaze was steady. "Still have a son out there, Adrian, alive. Don't let him become another ghost." Adrian flinched, the words hitting deeper than Elias expected. His jaw clenched, eyes glistening with something unspoken. Later that night, back home, Elias knocked gently on Sophia's door. She didn't answer at first. Finally she opened it, face weary. "Papa," she whispered, "I ruined everything." Elias pulled her into his arms. "No, mija. You made a mistake, yes, but mistakes don't end us. They show us where to begin again." Her tears dampened his shirt. "Do you really think Adrian can forgive us?" Elias hesitated, then remembered Mrs. Ramirez's words. "Only if we help him forgive himself first." For the first time in weeks, Sophia clung to her father not out of guilt, but hope. Meanwhile, Adrian sat alone in his office long after Elias left. Stared at the skyline, Mrs. Ramirez's advice echoing in his head through Elias's voice. Ghosts don't leave unless we face them. He rose abruptly, pulled open his desk drawer, and retrieved the photo of the boy's face staring back at him, frozen in time. His hands trembled. "D," he whispered to the empty room. "I don't even know if you hate me. But maybe it's time I find out." And somewhere, in the shadows of the building, Marcus watched Adrian through the glass walls, his jaw tightening. He had planned for Adrian's ruin, but he hadn't counted on Adrian finding resolve again or Elias being the one to give it to him. Marcus muttered under his breath, "Not if I can stop it." The city was unusually quiet that night. Rain tapped against the skyscraper's glass like a steady metronome, filling the silence Adrian and Elias had long avoided. Elias moved slowly through the office, but for once, the mop stayed dry. Dead, he sat across from Adrian, who nursed a glass of water instead of whiskey. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Adrian broke the silence. "You think I should find him?" Elias met his gaze. "I think you should face him. Hiding hasn't worked, has it?" Adrian gave a hollow laugh. "You talk like it's simple, as if I haven't rehearsed that meeting in my head 1,000 times. Do you know what stops me every time?" Elias waited. Adrian's voice cracked. The look on his face. I don't know if he'd recognize me as a father or curse me as a stranger. Elias's throat tightened. "Maybe he'll do both, but at least he'll see you tried." Later, after Adrian left, Elias lingered by the window. His reflection stared back older, worn, lined by years of labor and grief. He whispered to himself, "You wanted to believe Daniel would be proud. But you hide too, Elias. You hide behind work, behind silence, even from Sophia." The truth cut deep. Sophia had reached for him so many times, but he had pulled back, afraid to break again. His son was gone, but his daughter was still here, and he was letting her slip through his fingers. For the first time, he admitted it aloud. "I failed her, just like Adrian failed his boy." The thought didn't condemn him, it freed him, because admitting failure meant there was still time to change. The following evening, Elias found Adrian staring at the box again, photo in hand. Adrian didn't look up as Elias entered. "I used to tell myself I built this empire for him," Adrian said softly. "Oh, he'd see I wasn't worthless. But what does money mean to a child who only wanted his father's time?" Elias stepped closer. "My boy. He didn't care how much money we had. He cared if I showed up for his soccer game, if I listened when he was scared at night. I'd give anything to do that again." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Still have Sophia." Elias froze, the words cutting with unexpected precision. Adrian finally looked up. "You think I don't notice? You hover around me, giving me advice, but at home you're a stranger to your own daughter. Don't preach to me about ghosts when you're drowning in them yourself." Elias bristled. "That's not fair, isn't it?" Adrian's eyes were sharp, almost cruel. "At least I admit I ruined things. You pretend you're some saintly father, when in truth you're terrified to face her pain." The words struck like a blow. Elias wanted to shout, to deny it, but deep down he knew Adrian was right. He had been hiding. He had let Sophia carry the guilt of Daniel's death alone, while he busied himself cleaning floors. Elias lowered his head. "You're right. I failed her, but admitting it is the first step. Can you do the same?" The question hung between them like a mirror. The rain grew heavier, a low rumble of thunder in the distance. Adrian rose and walked to the window, staring at the storm. "I built towers to escape, but the higher I climbed, the more I saw myself looking down, alone." He closed his eyes. "Maybe it's time I stop running." Elias stood beside him, the city lights reflecting in both their weary faces. "We can't change what we've done, but we can choose what we do now. You can call your son, and I can talk to my daughter." Adrian turned, studying Elias. For the first time in weeks, his eyes weren't cold or bitter, they were searching. Do you really think it's possible? Redemption. Elias's voice was steady. Not redemption, connection. That's what saves us. That night, back home, Elias knocked on Sophia's door again. She opened it cautiously. He took a deep breath. Mija, I've been hiding. From you, from my grief. I thought if I buried myself in work, I wouldn't feel the hole Daniel left. But in doing that, I left a hole in you too. Tears filled her eyes. Papa. He pulled her into his arms, voice breaking. I'm sorry for making you carry the guilt alone, for not being brave enough to face it with you. She clung to him, sobbing softly. I just didn't want him to be forgotten. He won't be, Elias whispered. Not as long as we remember together. For the first time in years, father and daughter allowed themselves to grieve openly. And in that grief, something fragile yet healing stirred. Storm had passed, but its echo lingered in the air. The city glistened from rain, neon lights reflecting in puddles like fragments of broken glass. Adrian sat alone in his penthouse office, the photo of his son still resting on the desk. His hands hovered over it as if afraid to touch, afraid to feel. The silence was suffocating. Then his phone buzzed, a message from Elias. Ghosts don't leave unless we face them. Tonight, make the call. Adrian's chest tightened. He poured himself water instead of whiskey and stared at the numbers he had written months ago, tucked away in a folder labeled Someday. Someday had arrived. Meanwhile, across town, Elias paced his small apartment. Sophia sat at the table watching him. Are you going to call him? She asked softly. Elias froze. Call who? Adrian, she said. I know you've been pushing him, but what about us, Papa? What choice are you making for us? Her question cut deep. Elias sat across from her, his eyes heavy. The choice to stop hiding, to tell you the truth about your brother, not just that he's gone, but about how I failed him. Sophia's breath hitched. I wasn't there the night he needed me, Elias admitted. I was working late, mopping floors in another man's office, and by the time I came home it was too late. His voice cracked. I thought if I kept working, kept my head down, I could escape that guilt, but all I did was abandon you in the process. Tears streamed down Sophia's face. Papa, I never blamed you. I just wanted you to talk to me, to let me share the grief instead of carrying it alone. He reached for her hand, gripping it tight. Then let this be my choice. From now on, we face it together. For the first time, her smile returned small, trembling, but real. Back in the skyscraper, Adrian dialed the number with shaking hands. Each ring was a hammer on his chest. Finally, a voice answered. Hello? The sound froze. Him it was deeper than the boy he remembered, but familiar in a way that ripped through him. Daniel. Adrian's voice cracked, then steadied. It's your father. Silence. Then a sharp breath on the other end. You don't get to call me that. Adrian closed his eyes, pain slicing through him. You're right. I don't deserve to, but I need you to hear me. I failed you. I wasn't there. And I can't change the past, but I don't want to die without at least telling you I'm sorry. Another silence. This one heavier, trembling. Then the line went dead. Adrian stared at the phone, the rejection crushing him. Chest heaved as if the air itself had betrayed him. Moments later, Elias entered, carrying his old mop. Stopped when he saw Adrian's pale face. You called him, Elias said. Adrian's voice was hoarse. He hung up. Elias stepped closer, placing the mop gently against the wall. Then you planted the seed. Sometimes that's all we can do. Adrian laughed bitterly. Do you really believe that? Or are you just trying to comfort yourself, old man? Elias met his gaze with quiet strength. I believe it because I chose to tell Sophia the truth tonight. And even though it hurt, she listened. She stayed. That's the choice I made. Face her pain with her. And now, you've made yours. Adrian's shoulders slumped, but for the first time, he didn't look. Defeated, he looked raw. stripped of armor. I don't know if he'll ever forgive me. Maybe not, Elias said softly. But at least now he knows you tried, and sometimes that's the beginning. The city outside hummed with midnight life, but in that office, something had shifted. Two broken fathers, scarred by silence, had chosen action over hiding. Adrian whispered, almost to himself, I made the call. And Elias answered, firm and steady, that's all that matters. The morning after the storm, the city glowed with washed skies. For the first time in weeks, light poured freely through the skyscraper windows. Adrian stood at the glass wall of his office, his suit wrinkled from a sleepless night. His phone still lay on the desk, mocking him with silence. The call had ended badly, but something inside him had changed. For the first time, he had faced his fear. Elias entered quietly, mop in hand. He watched Adrian for a long moment before speaking. How many nights have you stood there, waiting for the city to give you answers? Adrian smirked faintly. Too many. And last night? Elias asked. Adrian's gaze didn't move from the horizon. For the first time, I wasn't waiting. I was reaching. Elias nodded. It wasn't victory, but it was movement. And sometimes that was enough. Back home, Sophia noticed a shift in her father too. At breakfast, Elias poured her a cup of coffee without asking, something Daniel used to do for her when she studied late. She blinked, startled. Papa, you remembered. I remember everything, Elias said softly. I just stopped showing it. But no more. Her lips curved into a small smile. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was warmth. Later that day, she slipped a note into his work bag before he left. When Elias found it in the janitor's closet, his eyes stung. Hope flickered in his chest, fragile but alive. That evening, as Adrian left the office, his phone buzzed again. D. froze. It was the same number he had dialed the night before. His hand trembled as he answered. Hello? Silence. Then a voice sharper now, defensive. Why did you call me? Adrian's throat tightened. Because I had to. Because I couldn't let another day pass without trying. A long pause. D. The voice snapped. Don't think one phone call fixes years of nothing. I don't, Adrian said quickly. I don't expect forgiveness. I want a chance to listen, to hear you, even if you hate me. The silence on the line stretched unbearably. Then, a sharp inhale, almost a sob, stifled before it escaped. Don't call again, the voice whispered. And yet, before the line went dead, Adrian heard it. The faintest tremor of hesitation. He lowered the phone, heart pounding. It wasn't acceptance, but it wasn't final rejection either. Somewhere, beneath anger, a crack had appeared. The next day, in the lobby, Marcus cornered Adrian with a smirk. Heard you've been making desperate phone calls, Marcus sneered. News travels fast. Adrian's eyes narrowed. You've been spying. Marcus leaned in. I don't need to spy. You're unraveling all by yourself. But to Marcus's surprise, Adrian didn't flinch. Stood taller. Maybe I am. But at least I'm doing it trying to fix something that matters. What about you, Marcus? When's the last time you risked anything for someone other than yourself? For once, Marcus faltered, his smirk stiffening. He covered it quickly with a scoff, but the crack was visible. Elias, who had been watching from the corner, caught Adrian's eye. He gave the faintest nod. Something was shifting indeed. That night, Adrian returned to his office to find a small package on his desk. Inside was a simple fountain pen with a note attached. Adrian held the pen for a long time, emotions tangled in his chest. He hadn't written anything personal in years, only contracts, deals, signatures. Maybe it was time to write something else. He pulled a sheet of paper from his drawer, sat down, and began to write. Not to his lawyers, not to his board, but to his son. The first words came slowly, awkwardly. Then they flowed. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I want you to know who I was when I failed, and who I am trying to be now. If you ever choose to read this, you'll know the truth, not the headlines. As the ink filled the page, Adrian realized something astonishing. For the first time in years, he felt lighter, and, across town, Elias tucked Sophia into a rare embrace before she left for school the next morning. She laughed at his fussing, but when she closed the door, her smile lingered. Hope was rekindling, not in grand gestures, but in small human choices, a note, a phone call, a pen. The kind of choices that, piece by piece, rebuild lives. The letter lay sealed in an envelope on Adrian's desk. His hand hovered over it, heavy with hesitation. Contained everything: his confession, his sorrow, his attempt at honesty. Yet the more he stared, the more the weight of sending it crushed him. Elias entered quietly, carrying his mop, though he didn't use it. His eyes landed on the envelope. "That's it, isn't it?" Adrian nodded slowly. "It could be the bridge or the end. You've done your part," Elias said gently. "The rest isn't yours to control." Adrian exhaled, but doubt gnawed at him. He was ready to send it until the obstacle arrived. "Do." Marcus stormed into the office with a file in hand, face triumphant. "You've been busy writing letters," Marcus said, tossing the file onto Adrian's desk. "Shame they'll never reach him." Adrian's stomach tightened. "What have you done?" Marcus leaned against the desk, smirking. "You really think your estranged son wants to hear from you?" "I've spoken to some of my contacts. He knows about your scandals. He knows about your failures. I've made sure of it." Elias stepped forward, anger flashing in his eyes. "You're poisoning him." Marcus shrugged. "I'm telling him the truth. People love truth when it makes someone else bleed." Adrian's fists clenched. "Why? Why go this far?" Marcus's smirk darkened. "Because I've lived in your shadow too long. If I can't have your empire, I'll burn your legacy. That boy will never forgive you, not after what he's heard." The words landed like knives. Elias stepped between them. "You think destroying him will make you whole? You're just another man running from your ghosts." Marcus sneered. "Air me your janitor wisdom. You'll both be forgotten long before I am." And with that, he walked out, leaving the envelope burning on the desk like a useless relic. That night, Adrian paced the office like a caged animal. Confidence, built so slowly, was unraveling. "You'll never believe me now," Adrian muttered. "Not after Marcus has poisoned his mind. My letter means nothing." Elias's voice was firm. "It means everything, because it's yours, because it's truth written from your hand, not his. Lies fade, truth lingers." Adrian shook his head. "What if it only confirms his hatred?" "Then at least he hates the real you," Elias said. "Not the ghost Marcus painted." Adrian froze, staring at him. The old janitor's words cut deeper than Marcus's venom ever could because they carried conviction, not malice. Still, fear clung to him. His hand hovered over the envelope, unable to move. Meanwhile, across town, Sophia was facing her own obstacle. She sat in her room, scrolling through articles Marcus had fed the press. They painted Adrian as a tyrant, a neglectful father, a man unworthy of redemption. Her heart ached. She remembered his laughter in rare, quiet moments, the haunted look in his eyes when he thought no one was watching. "People don't see him," she whispered. "They only see the monster Marcus wants them to see." For the first time, she opened her laptop not to read, but to write. A letter, not to Adrian, but to his son. "I am not family by blood, but I have seen him in the shadows. He is not the man they write about. He is broken, yes. Guilty, yes. But he is also trying. Please, before you shut the door forever, read his words for Red's." "Yourself." She sealed it with trembling hands. If Adrian's own letter faltered, perhaps hers would carry weight. Back in the skyscraper, Elias finally placed a hand on Adrian's shoulder. "The choice is still yours, to send it or to let Marcus win." Adrian stared at the envelope, his breath heavy. His mind screamed that it was hopeless. His heart whispered that it was necessary. At last, with shaking hands, he picked it up. "I'll send it," Adrian said. "Not for forgiveness, not even for hope, but because if my son is going to judge me, he deserves to know me, not Marcus's version of me." Elias nodded, pride flickering in his eyes. But neither of them noticed Marcus watching from the shadows, his smirk curling as he whispered to himself, "We'll see if hope survives the truth." The letter traveled farther than Adrian dared hope. Sealed with trembling hands, it passed through the courier system, across neighborhoods he hadn't walked in years, until it arrived at a modest townhouse. There, a young man with weary eyes and Adrian's same sharp jawline opened the envelope. His fingers hesitated before unfolding the pages. The words spilled into him. Admissions of failure, memories of absence, apologies heavy with sincerity. He almost tossed it aside until a second envelope slipped out, smaller, unfamiliar handwriting. It was Sophia's. He frowned, curious, and tore it open. "I am not his blood. I am only the daughter of the man who cleans his floors. But I have seen him, not the billionaire, not the headlines, just the father who misses his son. Please, don't let Marcus's lies be the last word. Read his truth, even if it hurts." The young man's chest tightened. He looked back at Adrian's letter, then at the girl's words. His breath caught. Against his will, a crack opened. 2 nights later, Adrian was in his office, staring at the skyline, when his phone buzzed. "The number!" He froze. His heart thundered as he answered. "Hello?" Silence. "N," the voice. "I read your letter." Adrian's knees nearly buckled. "And?" "You were honest." The voice trembled, both sharp and uncertain. "More honest than I expected. But that doesn't erase the years." "I know," Adrian whispered. "I don't want to erase them. I just want to start again, even if it's only once." A long pause. Then, one meeting. No promises. Adrian's breath rushed out, as though a lifetime of air had finally returned. "Where?" "Tomorrow, noon. The park near Mum's old place." The line went dead, but Adrian didn't care. Hope roared in his chest like fire. The next day, Elias insisted on coming. "Not to speak," he said, "just to stand behind you. Sometimes a man needs someone at his back." Adrian didn't argue. At noon, the park was alive with children laughing, joggers passing, the scent of roasted peanuts from a vendor's cart. Adrian stood by the fountain, hands clenched at his sides. Then there he was. The young man walked slowly, cautious, guarded. He looked at Adrian the way a soldier looks at a battlefield, wary, unwilling to be ambushed again. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Adrian's voice broke the silence. "You're taller than I remember." The young man's lips twitched, but no smile came. "You remember nothing," Adrian swallowed. "You're right. I missed too much. I failed too much, and nothing I say can give you back the childhood I stole from you." "Then why am I here?" the young man demanded. Adrian's eyes glistened. "Because I needed you to see me, not the empire, not the scandals, not Marcus's poison. Just me. A man who made mistakes. A father who still loves his son." The young man's jaw clenched. He looked away, then back, as if fighting himself. "Love. You don't get to use that word. You don't know what it cost me." Adrian's voice cracked. "Then tell me. Let me hear it. Let me carry it with you." For the first time, anger broke free. "Do you know what it was like? Watching other kids get picked up after school while I waited. Watching Mom cry because you chose meetings over dinners. Do you know how many nights I swore I hated you?" Tears burned Adrian's eyes. "Every one of those nights I was hating myself too." The words hung in the air, heavy but raw, unvarnished. Behind them, Elias stood silent, watching the impossible unfold. He saw the trembling in Adrian's hands, the storm in the boy's eyes, and knew this was the fracture point. Either healing would seep through, or the wound would seal forever. Finally, the young man's shoulders sagged. His voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't know if I can forgive you." Adrian stepped forward, tears slipping free. "Then don't forgive me. Not yet. Just give me a chance to try." The young man's lips pressed tight, torn between fury and longing. Then, slowly, he nodded once. "Not forgiveness, but not rejection either. A fragile door cracked open. That night, back in the skyscraper, Adrian sat with Elias in silence. The billionaire who once commanded boardrooms now looked like a man humbled, raw, but lighter. "He didn't forgive me," Adrian whispered. Elias placed a hand on his shoulder. "But he didn't walk away either. That's a beginning. And beginnings are worth everything." Adrian nodded, clutching the memory of his son's Eisenode filled with hate, but with something else. Something that looked a little like possibility. Skyscraper gleamed in the morning sun, glass panels reflecting a city that no longer felt like a battlefield but like possibility. Inside, Adrian's office stood unusually quiet. On his desk, the forgotten box still waited. It had started everything the frozen moment Elias uncovered it, the ghosts it unleashed. For weeks, Adrian avoided touching it again. But today, he asked Elias to open it with him. Together, they set it on the desk. Adrian lifted the lid. Inside lay faded photos, a child's drawing, an old baseball glove, relics of a boy's life before distance turned love into absence. Adrian's hands trembled as he touched the glove. "I gave this to him when he was 7. He used to wear it everywhere, even at the dinner table." Elias's voice was steady. "You kept it all this time." Adrian's throat tightened. "I didn't keep it. I hid it, because looking at it hurt more than losing him." Elias placed a hand on the box. "Then today, you stop hiding." Adrian nodded slowly. That afternoon, Adrian returned to the park. His son was there again, waiting by the fountain, arms crossed. This time, Adrian brought the box. The young man eyed it warily. "What's that?" "Shh. Yours," Adrian said softly. He opened it, showing the glove, the photos, the drawing. "I kept these because they were the only pieces of you I had left." The young man's breath caught as he reached for the glove. He slipped it onto his hand. It still fit, snug with memory. Adrian's voice shook. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know you were never forgotten, not for a single day." For a moment, the boy's eyes burned with tears. He turned away, hiding his face, but his voice cracked. "I hated you for leaving, but I don't know how to hate you now." Adrian stepped closer. "Then don't. You don't have to love me yet. Just let me be here. That's all I ask." Slowly, hesitantly, the young man nodded. The box between them was no longer a coffin of regret, it was a bridge. Back at the apartment, Elias found Sophia waiting at the table. Her eyes sparkled as he told her what had happened. He didn't forgive him, Elias admitted. But he listened. He stayed. Sophia's smile grew. "Sometimes that's more powerful than forgiveness. It means he wants to try." Elias studied his daughter, pride swelling. "You were braver than I was, Miha. Your letter helped open the door." She shrugged, but her eyes shimmered. "You taught me not to give up on people, even when they're broken." He pulled her into a hug, whispering, "And I'll never give up on you." For the first time in years, their home felt whole again, not because Daniel's absence was erased, but because they had finally chosen to carry it together. Weeks later, in the skyscraper, things began to shift. Adrian returned to board meetings, not with the arrogance of a king, but the humility of a man who knew loss. The headlines softened. Rumors of reconciliation spread quietly, whispers that the billionaire had finally faced his past. Marcus, furious at his failure to sabotage, found himself isolated. Colleagues turned cold, seeing through his schemes. Downfall was not fiery but quiet. His ambition devoured itself. And Elias, he was no longer just the janitor. Employees greeted him with respect. Adrian often sought his counsel, not as a worker, but as a friend. One evening, Adrian placed a new box on the desk. "What's this?" Elias asked. Adrian smiled faintly. "Not forgotten things. New ones. A notebook, a pen, a place to write letters while there's still time." Elias's eyes warmed. "That's a box worth keeping open." The final image lingered. Adrian standing with his son at the park, Elias with Sophia at home, both pairs walking forward, not healed completely, but healing. The forgotten box had once frozen Elias in shock. Now it has thawed the frozen years, turning relics of regret into symbols of belonging. My beautiful family, in the end, it wasn't the billions that mattered, not the skyscrapers, not the empires. It was the choice to stop hiding, to open the box, to face the ghosts, and to remember that redemption is never about erasing the past. It's about choosing to write a different future.